question for you. Why do intelligent women hesitate when the risk feels personal? Esther didn't. Today, we will be examining influence under risk, because leadership is not tested when everything is going well. It is tested when something will cost you. And often as women, when something is going to cost us a lot, we choose not to pursue the things that God has called us to. Today we're going to explore how Esther pursued the dreams that God had for her from identity and the risk that it could have cost her, but she chose to believe in what God called her to do anyway. Hello Teresa, welcome. And I'm Sandra Bizaka. I am a mindset architect, resilient specialist. I teach women how to build resilience through biblical principles. And today I want to discuss, as I said, in the context of what Esther did. In the book of Esther, we meet a woman who did not choose her circumstances. Life happened to her. She was a Jewish girl living in a very ungodly nation. She was an orphan, a minority, and under a system that gave her very little structural power. Back then, women had very little power. Now imagine being a Jewish woman in a nation that did not even like Jewish people. And yet, she found herself at the center of a moment that would determine the survival of a whole nation. She was not leading from strength at the time. She was leading from position. And position alone is never enough. A leader that's not stabilized in their identity, their position is only going to be something that will make them feel insecure and actually use it to their own advantage instead of serving the people that they were placed to do. So how do we become leaders that lead from identity, not just position? Because you can have the position without the identity, but identity will always take you further than the position, because it's not the identity it's not the position that gives you the position in itself, but people are able to lead without the official position. So we're going to explore that. The pressure under Esther, it was politically volatile. I mean, you have Haman who wants to hang all the Jewish people, and speaking up would have cost her position. Approaching a king in those days without invitation could cost you your life. And this is not a symbolic risk that she was taking. It could actually happen when the king doesn't extend his scepter to you, that you would get hanged for breaking protocol. But she was willing to break protocol because she realized the moment she was called for such a time as this. Most women do not struggle with capability. They struggle with risk. Not because they are weak. Most of us are not weak women. We are strong women. But because the risk is real and the consequences are real, most women, including myself, are not really ever willing to take the risk unless we are pushed into taking the risk. And because it doesn't matter how competent you are, it doesn't guarantee that you will have the result that you want to get. So often as women, we shy away and we hold back. But Esther, she knew this. She knew exactly what she was walking into when she was asked to go speak to the king, because she realized that if she doesn't do it, a whole nation will perish. When Mordecai sends for her, that changed everything. He said to her, "You may have come to this position for such a time as this." In that moment, I think, in my humble opinion, she realized that, oh, hang on, I wasn't just called to be a queen for myself. I was called to be a queen for something bigger than myself. And I want to read to you what she said. If you read in the story, after Mordecai speaks to her, in that moment, I think her whole entire frame shifted. She stopped seeing herself as a woman preserving safety, and she begins to see herself as a woman positioned for purpose. That is not a small internal shift. She had to do a lot of shifting because she went from, I want to stay safe, I want to stay alive, to being told that who knows that you have been placed in a situation like this for such a time as this. And just because you're a queen, it does not mean that your life would be spared, because you're still a Jew, even though you are a queen. She didn't receive any guarantee that her strategy is going to work. She does not receive any promise of protection that because you're a queen, you'll get protection. She doesn't. She stopped asking, how much will it cost me? She started asking, what was I placed here to do? And I think for us as women, we have to start asking that. Instead of saying, how much is it going to cost me? My reputation, our friendships, whatever it is that you feel like is going to cost you too much, you need to start asking a different question and make that mental shift. And the question is, what was I placed here to do? What were you placed here to do? And begin to work from that place, because it doesn't matter if what you're called to do is more important than the cost. Then you begin to do what the calling is. And here, in this moment, she makes a resilient decision. She does not act impulsively. She gets her ladies together. She fasts. She prepares. She strategizes on what's going to happen. She thinks carefully about the timing and about how she's going to implement that strategy. And she says something that you and I say all the time, that will echo into eternity. She realized in that moment, my calling is more important. And if I perish, then I perish. Because it doesn't matter what else happens after that. What happens is to be obedient in what I've been called. And if that obedience leads to me losing everything else, that's okay. As long as I am doing what I have been called to do. Being defiant in the face of our own fears. Being defiant in what everybody is going to think and say about this. That's right, Teresa. We have to do the things we believe we've been called to do. And we have to be able to say, if I perish doing this, then I perish, because the conviction is going to carry us. And you might say that her response is reckless. It wasn't reckless, and she wasn't in despair either. Her decision was anchored in conviction. And we have to be able to walk in conviction. If you're not a woman walking in conviction, then you will be swayed by everything that comes your way. She had already settled who she was and what she was here for. And this is why it's important that we move from identity, because your identity is the anchor, and that anchor will help you build resilience. She was no longer willing to negotiate with fear. She made her decision from identity, as I just said, and fear no longer had a final word on how she moved through life. The conviction did, the identity did, the calling did. And I think too often we make decisions based on fear. The fear gets the last word. We buckle under pressure. But because her identity was stable, she was able to stand under pressure. And the question I'm going to ask today, do you know who you are? Is your identity able to carry you under difficult and pressurized situations? Are you able to stand when everything feels like it's falling apart? She decided to walk into that room. She received the instruction to go save her people. She executed her strategy with patience, with precision, and a nation was saved. Again, from identity, she was not doing it out of ego. She realized she just needed to do what she was called to do. If she perishes, she perishes. It doesn't matter what happens after that. She just has to do what she was called to do. The influence did not begin when she walked into the throne room. It began when she was stabilized internally. The moment she shifted from self-preservation to purpose, that's what made the outcome possible, because she realized this has nothing to do with me. I just have to do the part I have been called to do. And how does it translate in modern leadership today? If you're a leader, and I don't mean a leader just in corporate, if you have a house, you're a leader because you are leading a home. In whatever you do, you always have influence, so you are a leader. And I think we need to think of leadership in a different way. We always think of leaders as people that are running big companies and big corporations or companies or whatever. But if somebody is following you, you are a leader. And how does it translate in leadership today? In leadership today, I'm going to read what I wrote because I think I have to say it the way I wrote it. In leadership today, risk paralysis is one of the most common barriers to influence. Women wait until they feel fully confident. Amen to that. I've done that. I'm going to do it until I feel fully confident. What if you never feel fully confident to do what you've been called to do? We always wait until we feel fully confident, until the outcome is guaranteed. I want to guarantee that it's going to work. If it's not going to work, I'm not going to take the risk. Until approval is secure. What if you never get approved by people around you? And the timing feels right and the room feels safe enough. Sometimes we have to walk boldly and by faith. Sometimes that looks like walking on water. Sometimes that looks like I don't have all the answers, but I know I have been called to do this, so I'm going to do this. But resilient influence does not wait for perfect conditions, because growth does not happen in perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not require bravery. They do not require courage. They do not require resilience. This is why we have to be able to read the season and say, I am not going to wait for the perfect conditions to do the things that I have been called to do. Just like Esther, the conditions for her to rise up in her queenly calling were not perfect. She did not wait for approval. She did not wait to feel confident enough. She did not wait for somebody to encourage her. Hey, Esther, you can do this. No. She read the times and she knew what she had to do. It requires calculated risk, calculated courage, and the willingness to move from identity when everything else is uncertain. Because when you move from identity, it doesn't matter whether it works or not. It doesn't. It changes nothing about who you are. The outcome is not correlated to who you are. So whether it works, you are still a woman of God. Whether it doesn't work, you are still a woman of God. You are still called, you are still approved, you are still a daughter of the Most High God. And if we begin to move through the world like that, we are no longer dominated or led by our fears, by our insecurities, by anything outside of us. We start moving from the inside out. And in that place, we choose purpose over preservation. We choose purpose over looking like a fool. We choose purpose over what everybody else is going to say. The choice is available to you and I as well, to choose to walk from a place of identity and purpose. Here's something I want you to think about. Before I ask you this question, I want you to sit with something here. There's a difference between wisdom and avoidance. And I know in my life, I've used a lot of say, oh, I just need a bit more wisdom. Actually, no, I'm avoiding to do what I know I need to do because I am afraid of the outcome, because the outcome is uncertain and I need certainty before I move. And because of that, I have missed out on a lot of opportunities. And I'm sure you can say the same thing, that you have missed out on a lot because you wanted for all the stars to be aligned in order to move. Because there comes a time between preparation and paralysis, between patience and fear dressed up as strategy. I'm just waiting for the right time. Oh, I just need to do a little bit more. Or I just need to reread that proposal again before I send it. No, that is not strategy. That is just fear. We must call things up the way they are. It's just fear. I am afraid to do this. And the moment we begin to be honest with ourselves, we can begin to do the things we know we are called to do. So my question to you is, what are you preserving comfort instead of doing what you're called to do? Where are you preserving comfort instead of stewarding your call? Are you preserving your comfort, or are you stewarding the call that God has called you to do? Are you preserving your reputation instead of walking in the purpose that God has called you to do? Are you preserving what people think about you instead of doing the things you have been called to do? Is there a conversation you are avoiding to have with yourself? Or a room you have been called to enter, but you have not entered because you believe that you have to be prepared? But I'm telling you, your identity needs to be anchored. When your identity is anchored, you can walk into any room because nobody gets to tell you who you are. Nobody determines your worth. Your identity will carry you into places because everything else will fail you. And if you allow your ego to get in the way, then you walk into a room. When you fail, you will walk out with a tail between your legs because you feel like it was all up to me. But if your identity is anchored, it doesn't matter whether it works or not. It says nothing about me. In fact, it says I am courageous, I am bold, I am able to take risk when others shrink. I am able to face fear in the eye and say, I will do what I know I've been called to do, whether I feel ready or not. And readiness comes. It's like going to the gym. Just before I came on this live, I was telling my husband that doing these lives, it's very uncomfortable for me. But here I am doing it. So if I can do it, so can you. But it's like going to the gym. You don't always feel like going to the gym, but you go anyway. Some days you feel so good about going to the gym and you give it 100%. And some days you arrive at the gym, you're thinking to yourself, what am I doing here? And you give it 20%. And some days you give it 50%. Some days you give it 70%. But here's the thing. Every time you go, a muscle is being built. Whether it's 20%, you are building. Whether it's 10%, you are building. Whether it's 50%, you are building. The point is, we should not always wait to feel ready. What we should do is to ask God to anchor our identity. So when the opportunities are open, we're not out here questioning who we are because we know whose we are, but we are walking in boldly, knowing whether this works or not. It says nothing about who I am because my identity is anchored in who God says I am, not in the outcome of anything I do. Esther demonstrated that very well. She did not wait for the risk to disappear for her to stand up. She did not wait for the outcome to be guaranteed. She did not wait for somebody else to go first. She did not wait for approval. She did not wait for people to say, oh, Esther, you can do this. No, she didn't. You know what she did do? She knew who she was, and she knew who she served. And she knew that the victory that will come out of this was not dependent on her. It was dependent on the fact that she showed up. And if she did not show up, somebody else was going to be risen up to show up. How many times have you been called to do something and you procrastinated? And then 3 months down the line, you see somebody else doing it. And in fact, they are more mediocre than you would have been. You know why? Because their identity was stabilized internally. She moved from identity, and her influence changed the course of history. You want to be influential? Be anchored in your identity, not from ego. Ego will make you chase things and people. Identity will have you walking into a room so boldly because nobody gets to decide who you are. You know who you are and whose you are. So be anchored in your identity, because identity stability under pressure produces resilient influence. Because of her courage, the Jewish people were able to stand up and be resilient. Your courage will encourage somebody else. Your boldness will encourage another woman. So go be bold. Go be the woman that walks into a room because she's internally stabilized, and under pressure, she produces resilient influence. That's all I have for you today. Go be Esther. Go be a woman that is bold, brave, and courageous. A woman whose identity is anchored in God. See you tomorrow.